All right. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February Board of Commissioners meeting. Again, thank you, everyone, for attending, either virtual or in person. Today's format, again, for the public, is that you need to dial *9 to raise your hand, and you will be called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number. When that happens, please state your name and address. We will have the public comment period towards the end of the meeting. Again, commissioners, during the pandemic, all meetings will continue to be held virtually, and there's no limit on the number of meetings attended virtually. Normally, we adopted a remote participation policy that allows each commissioner to participate remotely only twice per year, and only if certain conditions are met. However, during the pandemic, that policy is not applicable. I would also like to thank the commissioners for providing their input on developing our guiding principles for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Today, we'll have a resolution to formally adopt those guiding principles, and that will outline our critical values to be implemented by NRHA and its staff in all circumstances. But now to invite your comments, any on the January minutes. All right, thank you. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Ms. Carnes?
Mr. Albert?
Aye.
Ms. Arrington?
Aye.
Commissioner Gresham? Commissioner Purrier?
Aye.
Mr. Benassi, if you can hear me?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner, was that Commissioner Gresham?
No.
As well?
No.
Okay. Okay, I heard Commissioner Benassi. Commissioner Dillard?
Aye.
Chairman Musacchio?
Aye. We've had a request for comments from Raytron White, so before we move forward, I'll ask Raytron to come in and speak to us. He's supposedly right down the hall.
Okay, we have a
Good morning.
Good morning.
There you go.
Good morning, Good morning.
Good morning. I'm here. Oh, thank you.
No, you good. I was saluting you.
Oh, good. Good morning. It's so good. It's so glad to be here this morning. I have a couple of concerns that is containing, one is in Rainy Village and one in the residents of all public and mixed income housing. The first in Rainy Village that our Ohio Creek project. I know it's a pandemic and we can't get out, but we're desperate need of someone to look at our safety in our community. There are 3 things in our community that we have access to get out. There's only half of one to get out. When it's not raining like it is today, it would flood. A couple weeks ago, I called the city. The residents were stuck. I know the city has a big budget of claims for cars. About 8 cars got stuck when they couldn't go to work. They got stuck at work. And there's some construction by the Learning Center coming to the second part of Kimball Terrace that they have dug up 3 or 4 times. I'm one of them in my house and stuff that got broken. And some of the residents, there's no sidewalks, there's no pedestrian, no signs. There's no signs that say go this way, go that way. And the neighbors and the kids have really been really patient. But our patience has run out of time. I've talked to people in NRHA, and I would like for you all to look into this. And if you come and see, the city came out, the ladies at the city were concerned. At nighttime, there's no lights, no direction when the workers are coming home from work. And from the tide, we don't have any buses, so they have to take the tide. And when it floods, they have to go all around 1.5 miles to get to their homes. And it only takes them probably 5 minutes to get to the bus line. And we have no, just NRHA, our called, some people at NRHA, and they were saying, we're in the same fiscal as you are, and we don't know what's going on. So I've called Dr. Beaver in the city, and we're taking a charge in February, March. We want to fit our neighborhood back in a way that we can do what we need to do to get out and be access to stuff that we need to get to. So, and the second thing is, I have a problem in my neighborhood. My neighbors have a problem. I think we have a problem with the whole city about this coronavirus. There's some leaders that have been calling my home and my house, asking me for advice on the residents, the seniors, to get in the vaccination, the process of doing it. And the city, and I can tell them they have no plan for outcomes. And I've called NRHA to find out some things that we could do, and there was no people wanted to help, but there's no plan. We have people that have phones, don't have the computers, can't get access to anything but a telephone call. And when you're an age and you have a lot of underlying conditions, it gets hard to frustrate when you want to call a number or try to get somebody to help you when there's no help. There's some things in NRHA you probably know, you probably don't know. They're just so worried about their neighbors and the residents there's coronavirus in the agency that I do know. And we just need to be helped. We're crying. I am a person of faith.
John, I don't mean stuff. Can you back up? You said there's coronavirus within the agency.
Yes, and that's for a fact.
NRHA.
Yes.
That's good.
That's a fact.
Continue from there.
And I just want to make sure we're so concerned about the neighbors, the residents. The residents have been very, very careful. We only have 2 people in our neighborhood that I do know. When I try to make my facts factual, to make sure all the know that you can do your homework on it, that we had it. We're trying to stay safe. There's a lot of not outside. The kids are going to their little huts and going home. But we need to be careful about today how we're doing our residents, because it's a cry. There's no in place in NRHA. There's nothing in place that I do know for a fact that people can call and help. I've asked the people in agencies, they're helping me today, asking people to get a flyer out that there's a phone call that you can go to call even CVS or even Norfolk Health Department to call the number, because the city put in some places that in my neck of the woods, we have to come all the way downtown for a lady to get registered when she can't even get out her neighborhood because of Ohio Street. So how we're doing this to help our neighbors. I want to open my doors. I want to help them because there are some people in our neighborhood that are sick and under conditions, but they can't get out. They could go to the school or to my church on the corner. But the city has not reached out to us about it. And I know they have not reached out to NRHA because there's not been nothing in plan for our people. This coronavirus has been around since February of last year this time. And it's the poor plan of the city and everybody for their residents. It's not, I've seen on TV, there are more people in line that I haven't seen a person in line that lives in a public house. And there's nothing on our side of the neck of the woods, I call it, that we have to come to Vivian Mason or Berkeley to get them registered. If we had a system in NRHA, some of the people, some of the workers are at home, supposed to be working, getting them a call from resident. If you want to get registered, if you want to get them, let me take your name. Let me help you register while I'm at work. Take 5 names a day and register people. Some people we cannot do it because they don't have phones. Some people may not even want to be registered. They may want to wait, but we don't have nothing in place. And it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. That every citizen that's under NRHA umbrella needs some kind of outlet, some input. And I'm pleading with commissioners if we can all get together just to make sure we can get the people registered. We know we all can't save all of them and get them all, but we're trying to have a start somewhere that we can go. And I've called and I have not one, no one has no clue how to get, but one person helped me out trying to get, they gave me a flyer and put the numbers on to get the people. I had Pastor Guns call me. He talked to the governor, he talked to the city people, and there was no plan for NRHA people to get them. We're low income. The probably other people that they call low income or the people at risk to get it, that mostly in public housing. And I know they won't come because they've been calling and asking me, do you know anything? And I told them, no, I don't know anything about it. We'll find out today. So maybe get up this morning to come. I know it's been a year and we've been quiet. We've been trying to do this as best we know how. But at this time, we need help, and we're pleading that we can find some way that all the senior citizens, and the people are from 65 and up until the people at the underlying age conditions to get them started on something, so there's some kind of hope. We know we can't do it tomorrow, we know we can't do it next week, but there's some hope to get them online. I got you registered, so, and if we find your way to get there, or we'll come closest to the person to register, you know, so I just want to know if we can just have someone to look in and just see what's going on, because we really need help. And it's really got really that bad, we come down.
Yes, Ron has some.
Yeah, on the question about the vaccination, I had a conversation with the city this week, and as far as getting information out to our residents, our Jen and Lori Crotch with the city is working with the city and the health department to get the information out. We're just waiting on the actual plan. Now, when I spoke with James Rogers, the plan was to try to, as far as our community, to work with the local churches that are nearby to try to set those places up to be centers for our residents to be vaccinated, and they are working on that plan, and also even with our employees in terms of getting us registered as essential workers. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting a call today on how that process is going to work, but everyone has to pre-register. So we're just waiting on the last bit of information as far as the plan working out for our residents and also for our staff. So the city is working on that, and I know that there was some information put out Saturday by the city that Ray Tron, you talked about some of the residents that don't have, like, they can't register online because they may not have a computer, they may need assistance. The city put out a flyer listing, and it may not be close to the area that you're at Grand Village, but there's a list of areas virtually.
Oh, yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
These are the areas that they have set up for people who can't, especially seniors who don't have access. They have people there at the sites to work with them to register, because you can't get vaccinated, or they won't make an appointment for you unless you're registered. So that's the information that they have out there. So, like I said, as far as our community is concerned, they're trying to work out the logistics.
Yes,
in terms of
and working it out. Coronavirus came in March and February last year. It's planning, and I'm not saying that NRHA, but the city and NRHA, the plan of, we're still on that side of the bridge. People have wheelchairs. They can't even get to Berkeley, or there's nothing on that side. We have a big, humongous school there. We have a big, humongous rec center. We have a TMC office, and we have 3 or 4 churches. And I'm going to the city to talk to them again, even the people I do know, some person to ask them why haven't they said, because you have even people not even residents of NRHA.
And another limiting factor to it, they only get 2,500 doses a week.
That's fine. We know we don't have another citizen use, but to have something in place that the people can be really mindful to concern the listen. It may not be this month, but maybe next month. Let's hold on, we will have something in place. So wait till now to have something in place, I think that's really redundant to me, because the coronavirus didn't come last week, it came a year ago.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say, Ray Tron, that that's why I asked you again what you said about the employee, because Mr. Jackson and I have talked over the weekend, actually, about staff and how they might, what the strategy was, what the plan was, what their policy, what our policy has been related to that. And I know Ron is now working to see if there are any breaches in that policy. He and I talked about it. I called him over the weekend at night, and because I heard from a staff member to say what you just said, and I can tell you that he is on it. I mean, just with the things he communicates to me, and I don't want to sort of talk about what his strategy is as it relates to that, but he assured me of the policy, told me what it was, and then committed to revisiting it to make sure that it's working correctly for the residents and the staff, because without one, you can't get the other one done. So,
you can ask any of our, especially our executive team, that we do have a policy in place, and it's never final, because if we get new information in from, like, the CDC, we always have to add information. But we have we keep track of the numbers. Within NRHA, we do contact tracing. With the contract tracing, we let people know that, if they can't come in, before they come back, they need to get tested. So we do have a process in place, even with our staff and interacting with the residents. There is a process in place for us. And I could just say the part of the problem is just like with the city, when we really didn't see much of a surge until after the holidays. And we really can't control what people do when they're away from the house. We can only control what's here, even though we try to admonish people to monitor their behavior when they're away. And just like any other organization, we try to do what we can. We've heard managers say that they've noticed some of our employees not being following protocol, to the point that my last message out said, if we see that you're not observing the safety protocols, that you could face discipline. So, like I said, we have a managing COVID in the workplace document that all managers and staff are to abide by, and we have been consistently messaging. So, yes.
And I'm fine with that. But my dilemma is what we're doing with the residents. What is the plan for the residents? We have people that are working in social work, and we have people in different neighborhoods that they are social workers that work there. We even have a clinic in Young Terrace. Where is the plan to make sure we can get these people on if they have not got to a computer to get them online? Are we doing a wellness check? Are you registered?
We're doing.
You need help.
We're doing the wellness check.
And I want to figure out, because I called some people yesterday, and there was nobody knew what was going on. They gave me a flyer that Jennifer gave someone, and I got the flyer. I put it out, but there's no number in case you don't have a computer. So I put an email this morning before I came here. Can we get the number from the health department on the flyer so they can call and put this stuff? There's some that you can register. They got the names of the rec centers. Still, if they can't get there, can I call? Because if I come out the house to go get registered, and I'm gonna catch the COVID from going there and coming back, and then I go back to get a shot. So we can call and keep them from coming out at one time to have a social kind of program for that, to have them to register with phone, and then when there's time for them to come, they can go get their vaccination at that time, that comes back and forth. So that's the plan I was trying to figure out if I can help, or there's something that we can get in place of that.
I think there is a plan that can be put in place right now. That's what the QMC are for.
Yep.
And I think that they should step up now. The seniors don't have to come out their home because they have phones. TMC can set up, talk with like Walgreens or whichever one, CVS, that's gonna be able to set up appointments for these seniors or people that can, and set up appointments. Work with them and find out when they can give you a slot. Then you talk to the seniors and say, well, they have a slot open at this certain time, and then you set up that appointment for them. They never come out the house, they got an appointment. And if you have to pay someone else, you got staff member on your board, use them. They don't have to leave their house. And they don't have to be, this is called community, and that's what the purpose of the TMCs are.
Commissioner Rowe, that's why I'm here today. But we do have people that work for NRHA, that are caseworkers, and that's their job to do, to make sure the welfare of the residents. And we shouldn't put all that pressure, that kind of pressure on TMC. Because we've been calling.
I don't think
that's why we've called the agency, and no one has no plans for us to do stuff like that. And who has the authority to tell someone when you cannot, in the policy, you cannot get their phone number or let them know an address of a person I live next door? They don't want to give us that to even call somebody. That's the policy.
Well, the policy.
How we gonna call someone if we can't get the number?
I think you put out a flyer and
That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to, Jennifer sent a flyer to Mrs. Thomas. Mrs. Thomas sent it to me, but there's no phone number. That's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to figure out if there's some stuff that we can help at getting out to the residents, to help the agency to get out to the residents. That's why I'm here today.
Yes, great, Ron. Thank you very much. And highlighting the gaps which were clearly more evident in our residents than throughout the rest of the city. But really do appreciate you bringing these forward, letting us know the kinds of things, some options, and we'll get back with you as to how we can try to move this forward. because I know the frustration level
Yeah, I'm ready.
is very high throughout the city, and particularly with folks who, again, don't have a computer or don't have those things, so.
Right.
We will get back with you on what we're doing.
I appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
Ray.
take care. Happy New Year. I haven't seen all young people in a whole year. All right, take care.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Again, I think it clearly highlights the frustration of, everyone that they would love to have seen a plan. You know, it is unsettling that there's no overall plan, but again, I think his comments are well made, and Ron, you got some challenges, though.
Yeah.
And then I will go now, to the executive director's comments.
I just have a couple things. Couple months ago, when we had Chief Boone here and Sergeant Dixon, we had talked about some strategies in terms of crime reduction in our communities, and there was one particular strategy that we've been working on, and we finally seem to make some headway, and that was the conveyance of public property within NRHA properties. And basically, what the goal is to try to convey public property to NRHA, which will help Norfolk Police Department enforce the ban, no trespassing. As the way it stands now, there's, if they confront someone who's on the list, if they go stand on the sidewalk or city streets, it's almost like a sanctuary. You can't enforce it, but what we're trying to do, and Delphine is working with the city attorney's office to see what we can do in terms of how that would look if we were able to actually have that done within. And I don't know what properties, would be able to do that, but we are definitely, there seems to be a lot of movement to be able to explore and possibly be able to make that conveyance. I think that would be a big help in terms of how we can control our properties. And then just the final thing that I wanted to bring up, if you recall back in November, we had the minority female business, owned business roundtable. Back in November, we had it. It was well attended, and I just wanted to let you know that since that time, we've had 3 minority contractors get contracts with NRHA up to almost $1 million contracts that we've had just from contractors who attended the roundtable. So that's given us a lot of momentum in being able to continue on fully developing our economic inclusion policy, to make sure that we continue to do the outreach and be able to continue to look to see where some of the obstacles are, so that we can provide more opportunities for minority and female-owned business contractors, with the big one possibly being we have a large demolition contract coming out for the Tidewater area, and we're looking to be able to decouple that to provide more opportunities for minority contractors. Those are just the 3 things. I know we're with the time and everything, but I just wanted to mention.
Okay. Any comments, questions for Mr. Jackson? Commissioner?
Ron, yeah, this is Ken Benassi. Ron, that's great news. That's a great testimony to what we've been trying to do, and it looks like we're showing some results. So, bravo.
Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioners, any comments from the commissioners? Alfonso?
I do. Mine are a little more generic, but for me, quite necessary. I feel that, and it could be just my feeling or perspective on this, but I sense a loss of cohesion with the team, with the commissioners, and our interaction with our executives that manage the organization. It seems that our once found cohesion is waning. I don't know what the tension points are. I can certainly speculate what they may be, but I just pray that we can find a way to kind of weaken the tension, strengthen the unit, and bring the cohesion back. I think it gives us a stronger front when it comes to dealing with some very delicate and but necessary problems that we face, and they're not all based around minority inclusion or economic development or that kind of thing. I think even the problems, as I see them, have been very diverse in nature, and our responses to them have been well, close to being the same across the board. So I wish we could find a way to regain our unity and our cohesion, because I sense we've lost it, and I sense that we're losing more and more by the day.
Other comments? Thank you. All right, then I'll go ahead and move on to the development activities report, which is pages 11 and 12 in there. Since there hasn't been much going on, there isn't much to see there, but then the next is the St. Paul Area Choice Neighborhood Initiative Developer Update, and that's on page 13 in your packet. And I believe Steve Morales, you're up.
I'm actually, I think it'd be easier for me to just pop in real quick. Actually, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get out of the way, and that is John Majors, who's the project manager from Fiscal. He's gonna be giving an update and then introducing DBRM. So with that, I just wanted to introduce John real quick and then exit stage right.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. It is wonderful to see everyone. You really cannot wait until we can actually be there in person to present these types of updates to you. As Steve mentioned, I've got a couple things on to share with you this morning. One is a very general overview of where we are on the different development projects that are underway in the St. Paul's area, part of the C&I redevelopment project. And then I've got some really, really exciting news to share with you all about one of our new joint venture partners. So we'll move through the actual projects very quickly, and feel free to jump in with any questions that anyone has. So we all know that Blocks 19.
John?
Yes. Yep.
Can you please speak louder?
Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Is this loud enough?
I mean,
We can hear
we can hear you.
Understand you.
We can hear you, but it's very faint. Can you raise the volume on your side?
Let's see. I have never been told that I'm not talking loud enough. It is normally the absolute opposite. Let me. If that's not better, I'll take my headphones off and try to do it on my speakerphone. Is that better?
Not really.
No.
Not really.
We've turned up.
Okay, how's that? Is that better?
Oh, that's better.
That's better.
That's better? Okay, great. Okay, I just went to the speakerphone. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so let's start over. Blocks 19 and 20 that are sort of on the northern side of the transit station, if you will. Block 19 is the 4% tax credit seniors deal. Block 20 is the 9% family deal. Those will have their financial closing and begin construction this summer. And then one of the things I did want to mention there, and this will be consistent for all the projects, but given that blocks 19 and 20 are sort of first out of the gate, this is where we're really starting. The development team has engaged the Miles agency, Delcino Miles, many of you may know, who was a key contributor to the Virginia Beach disparity study. A lot of the goals that the city in their economic inclusion task force have been, sort of using as a reference point. Delcino was part of putting all that information together. We've engaged the Miles agency to help us with our MWBE efforts, and so she's been working already with Marlin Development, who's the general contractor for blocks 19 and 20. We have been working. She's really, wants to get out and move fast. She is already proposing some dates for a MWBE subcontractor fair. So that's really exciting. She's also doing some work with a casino project, and she said she's got like 1,000 registrants already for her upcoming casino project, MWBE fair. So we're really excited about that. So that's block 19 and 20. Block 17 and 18, if you just jump sort of right down a little bit south of the transit station there. Block 17 is the 9%. Block 18 is the 4%. Block 17, that tax credit will be submitted March 2021. As you all know, that tax credit application is, it is all hands. So everybody is that we are, locked and loaded. That is our priority focus, getting that tax credit. It takes, everybody's effort. City, NRHA, everyone's been incredibly helpful to get us moving in that direction. The block 18, the 4% tax credit, that'll come in summer of 2021. And then the next phase, I know the last meeting that I sat in on, Steve talked about some of the things that were happening in terms of the Snyder lot being potentially a lot that we wouldn't necessarily develop. And so looking at some of the other options, that dovetails very nicely from a time perspective with the fact that we were already planning for, this month, next month, to resume the design phase for the first phase of Tidewater Garden site. So, as we cross over what will be Church Street into what is currently Tidewater Gardens, the actual property, that first set of developments, we're very early in the process, but still looking to restart that design process. We'd already done a little bit of design on it. Just from a timeline perspective on that, and these will generally be 2 developments per year, so probably, 2 developments going for tax credits in 2022. This summer, so we'll start the design this summer. We would do community engagement. We do all the things, like we've done in the past, where we'll come and present. Hopefully we'll be able to actually come and present the designs to you all in your board meetings and that sort of thing. July timeframe, we go to ARB, information only. We did that with block 17 and 18, found that was really, really a helpful process to helpful component to insert into the process, where we just went and said, look, we're not asking for your approval this morning. We're just going in. We want to talk to you and show you what we've been working on, get your feedback and your thoughts. So that we think we do in July, sort of August to October. This would become sort of the formal approval and rezoning process. So we'd go to ARB for the actual formal approval. We'd go to the City Planning Commission and then go to City Council for a vote on the necessary rezoning and different requirements that we need there. March of 2022, so essentially a year from now, a year and change from now, that's when we would be putting in the 9% tax credit application, and then that summer of 22, we'd be putting in the 4% tax credit application. All these things are very, very early in the process, but that's every year we're essentially starting over with, okay, design, community engagement, coming to you all, showing you what we've been working on, getting your feedback, ARB, get their feedback, like that. So that's it from the project and the development standpoint. Any questions on that before I jump into introducing you all to BBRM? Okay, I'll keep moving.
Commissioner Gresham raised his.
No, he gave a thumbs up.
Oh.
Okay, all right. So BBRM is a BBRM Norfolk Partners is a joint venture of Bay Electric. This is the BBRM. Bay Electric, which is owned by John Biagas. Barron Communications, which is owned by Lafayette Tatum, who's joining us this morning. Rand Enterprises, which is owned by Randy Biagas, who's also joining us. And Mark Turner Construction, which is owned by Franklin Bowser. very quickly, I'll say that, this is something where we are going, and I should say all of what I'm going to share with you is subject to HUD approval, right? So HUD as the grantee for the C&I project has to approve any changes to our housing implementation entity. So everything I'm going to tell you is going to be subject to their approval. I want to just quickly give you all a little bit of background color, if you will. When I first started working on this project, maybe in March of 2019, I mean, people would come up to me unsolicited and say, man, that sounds like a really great project, but I tell you what, you guys are going to struggle. You're not going to be able to get MWBE participation. We just don't have that strong of a market here in Atlanta. I mean, unsolicited, people would just come up to me and say, you guys are going to fail at getting MWBE. And so this is something I was like, I just don't believe that. I choose not to believe that. I was at one of the Section 3 events. I think this one was in Newport News. John Biagas spoke. I tried to catch him before, he's super busy. He's in and out. So I couldn't catch him at that Newport News event because I said, that's the guy I want to talk to. I did reach out to him. He would probably tell you that I stalked him. And I got him on the phone and I said, John, you seem to know what we need to know. You seem to know the people we need to talk to. And he said, John, not only do I know the people, let's grab breakfast. I will bring them with me, right? So then John and I grabbed breakfast. He brought Lafayette, Randy, and Franklin with him to breakfast. And as they say, the rest is history. Over the past year, this group of individuals has been incredibly instrumental in helping us as the development team, looking at our plans in terms of constructability. We're going into ARB and Franklin, at Mark Turner Construction, he's like, John, you guys ought to tweak this, and this before you guys present this to ARB, which is just incredibly helpful. Again, incredibly helpful on the MWBE outreach guidance. And then just having that local presence who can, who has the feel, I jokingly call Lafayette Tatum, Mr. Norfolk. Seems like everybody seems to know him and he seems to know everybody. So again, the roles and responsibilities of BBRM in this partnership, they're going to be our local presence. They'll, really help us with the community engagement and relationships, that additional construction, review, monitoring, oversight. That is so helpful and valuable. And then even, we all know, and we've heard multiple times already this morning, how important the MWBE outreach and oversight is. I know you all have a bunch of information on them that's in the packet. I won't keep, sort of telling you how impressive I think these guys are. I would love for Lafayette or Randy, if you all would like to introduce yourselves and just say hello. And then, of course, if anyone has any questions.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Hi, John. This is Alfonso Albert.
Hey, Mr. Albert. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I appreciate, the hard work you have been doing on behalf of St. Paul and minority involvement. I know we received a report this morning from our executive director sharing that we've made some progress on that front, and we certainly hail and appreciate that. And as much knowledge as you have about the work you're doing, is there any way that you can share with us a little more specific strategy or plan that you have going forward? I know we've seen what goes into the St. Paul updates and things you plug into it, but is there any way we can maybe give a look of your written work as it relates to strategy or what the plan is going forward to increase minority participation or involvement and identify some specific things as opposed to saying number one, number three coming. But, we're trying to target, at least $6 million coming out of this project, and we're trying to ensure that we give at least 30% of this project into a minority. I mean, I know you can't just say that about a minority, but you can certainly have goals and targets that relate to that. And So as knowledgeable as you are with this and the hard work you're putting in, do you have anything that we can, kind of see and follow you along?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Thanks for, kind of opportunity to talk about that. That's a subject that is very passionate to me, and you know this from conversations that you and I have had. People will come to me and say, hey, this isn't Atlanta, right? Meaning that Atlanta's got a long track record of MWBs and things like that. And my response to that is, okay, that's fine, but what are we going to do today? What are we going to do with this project so that 5 years from now, that's not the same case? So 5 years from now, nobody should be saying, oh, you guys won't be able to get your MBE numbers because we just don't have that market in Norfolk. So, in terms of goals, the development team is going to adopt the same goals that the city has, which is 12% MBE, 13.3% WBE. Hiring Delcino is going to be a big part of that, because what that does is she's got a lot of the relationships already. She can get people to the fairs. And you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this at the different events that I've had an opportunity to present at. That's going to be a dynamic process, right? So I will tell you, and we've done some work in Birmingham, and we're working with a very small African-American woman-owned communications firm. And when we first sat down, I said, look, if you need things like some help, because I know the payrolls are long dated sometimes, and so we can talk about, do we need to help you find ways to set up a line of credit or something like that. And she said, John, I don't have any issues paying my people. I'm good on that area. Now, she might have needed some help on something else. Now, we might come to Norfolk, and when however many people show up to this, subcontractor fair, they might say, hey, you know what? Our issue is that we need a line of credit. We need help getting access to traditional lines of credit because, we got to pay our people every 7 or 14 days, and the payments only happen every 30 or 60 days. If that's the case, then that's something we'll work with those subcontractors and try to help them figure out. Some folks will say, you know what, man, I can do the work, but this certification, all the paperwork, I just want to do the work, man. I'm not the paperwork guy. Okay, so maybe we got to try to help that contractor or that other contractors with some admin help or something like that. But we won't know what Norfolk subcontractors need, what subcontractors in that area need until we get into having those conversations. So that's what I'm excited about, because I love just rolling up my sleeves and saying, man, how can we help y'all be successful? I hope that answers the question. I feel like it was a little long-winded. Lafayette or Randy, you guys want to add anything to that?
Oh, yes, this is Lafayette Tatum, Barron Communications. I had a meeting with the city maybe about a year and a half ago, and I know there's a program with Miss Susan Perry, Norfolk Works. I attended Norfolk Public Schools. I lived in Roberts Park. I went to Ruffner. My goal is to try to reach out to those guys and, ladies and gentlemen, to help them, to show them that, hey, I made it, hard work. I'm willing to go inside of, Tidewater Gardens now, giving them opportunities. A lot of those guys I know that are still out there. I understand the different communities out there because I went to school with a lot of them. So I want to go back and help, kind of pull them up to let them know that Barron Communications, Lafayette, went to Virginia State University, and my mentors, Franklin Bowser, John Biagas, Randy Biagas, I mean, they helped me along, and, now I'm a government contractor. We do work for NAVFAC. I have work out at Oceana. We have work at Huntsville, Alabama. We have no bonding issues. We also service Norfolk Public Schools. So the dream is real for me, and I know that I can go up there and show everybody that, hey, you can make it, and that's pretty much my goal, because nobody gets anywhere without the help of somebody. So, I'm willing to go back into the community and say, hey, we're here, we have this opportunity. What can you do? Please get your resume, and I'm willing to go, speak at Norfolk Works again and try to, give opportunities.
Thank you.
So, as a follow-up to that, and I'm glad that you've been successful. But as a follow-up to that, John, are we hearing a report on minority employees that are on the job? Are we hearing a report on minority subcontractors on the job? Are we hearing a report on how many minority contractors have gotten work in this? Tell me what we're hearing, because Lafayette just referenced, he's willing to work with these guys, and I'm assuming he's talking about a guy who has a bricklaying skill, or somebody who lays tile, or and the other. But I think the focus for me, and I can't speak for any of my colleagues here, the focus for me is how can we get more minority contractors involved at a level that significantly grows that minority company. And I think what I'm hearing is, and no, John, no disrespect to you, but what I'm hearing is, I think what minorities always hear.
When you say no disrespect to you, John, I know something's coming.
Yeah, no, I get it. But it's what we always hear when it comes to at the conclusion, the goal gets shrunk at the beginning. And it goes from minority contractors to minority sub-skilled trades, how many guys have this company hired, and then when all the dust clears, you might have two minorities that had some benefit. A perfect example is McGoffin Mall, $300 million project, and we ended up with two contractors that did one project, the body shop, when you come in. And but it started off with very lofty goals, very high aims, very targeted. And so, it's just a question. I don't want to put you on the spot. And if you don't have a clear, if you haven't talked about this with your team, you don't have a clear response to this, it's okay. But I just want to put the question out there.
No, and I appreciate it, Mr. Albert. I really appreciate that you are always a straight shooter. I never have to wonder what you are thinking or what's on your mind, and I appreciate that. So yeah, look, we've all seen that, and that's very disappointing when you have any type of project that starts off with lofty goals and people have the best intentions, and for whatever reason, you just don't get there. So one of the things, and I credit Marcia McGill, who's on the line, I think, in her economic inclusion group that she's been working with. I think Kim Thomas from NRHA has been part of that group as well. We've had an ongoing discussion about the economic inclusion plan, and one of the ideas that came out of Marcia and Kim, that group, was let's have look ahead reporting, right? So let's have reporting that says here's where we project all the different criteria, right? So there's some criteria and statistics that we sort of by requirement are legally required to produce reports on. But as a partner, I want to hear from you. What are the reports that you want to see on a monthly or quarterly basis? And then what we're going to do, Mr. Albert, we're going to take those and we're going to show you, okay, here's how we did in the previous period, and then we're going to do as well as we can. Here's where we project to be in the next 3 months, 6 months, et cetera. And that way, if there is any issue, that would happen, we're gonna catch it early. And I know you're gonna be a straight shooter just like you always are, and you're gonna say, John, I don't like the way this stat right here is trending. What are we gonna do about that? So that's one of the things that we've been talking about.
I don't want to chat something.
No, that's, again, thank you very much, John. And, as you know from Alfonso, a lot of times we're not interested in the rhetoric, we're interested in the outcome. And so I think that should give you a hint. That should give you a hint of where we're gonna focus.
And I don't know, I do actually, if I could prolong it just for a second. Hi, John, it's Suzanne Furrier, how are you?
Hey, good morning. And I've got all the time that you all need. I know you all have.
No, well, I mean, we're just increase the degree of difficulty here. As commissioners, we've talked about not only the opportunity to provide meaningful employment now and in the next, 3, 4, 6, 8 years in this significant project, to provide those opportunities to folks that may not have had them before. But we also see it as an opportunity to grow capacity within the minority enterprise community. I mean, some of the things that, Lafayette said about, being able to help people, so it's not just a one-off, that it's helping folks build a line of credit, it's helping people understand the back of the house, it's helping them build, so that if we do this with that kind of a vision, not only do folks benefit and their families benefit now, but we're building the future pipeline for, for talented folks who can do this work and haven't had the door open. So it's a double expectation on it. It's like we want to see now what happens. We want to see promise, and we want to see product. But we also want to do what we can do to continue that on through a longer trajectory.
Yeah. Thank you for. I mean, I couldn't have said that any better. And I will tell you, that's one of the things that really made me say I need to talk to John Biagas. He told a story at the Section 3 event in Newport News. Gosh, it must have been a couple years ago now. He said, he owns Bay Electric, right? He said he goes out to his job sites, and he said when he's out on his job site, there have been young guys who walked up to him and said, "Man, Mr. B, you own the electrical? Wow, you own the electrical contractor?" And he says, he'll see that same guy over time, and then next thing you know, that guy's maybe stepped up and he's a foreman or something, and that guy's got in his mind that one day he wants to own a subcontracting company. So Commissioner, exactly to your point, I would imagine, right, like, and there are stories like this from other cities where we've worked, where you start off with somebody who gets their OSHA training, they get, some on-the-job training in carpentry, and they do that on a project, and then the next project, they're a foreman. Then the next project, they've said, you know what, I can hang a shingle and I can do this on my own. And then years later, they've done that for a while, and now they're like, you know what, I've got my banking relationships. To Lafayette's point, I understand the bonding. I've got some capacity. Now they can be actually in the ownership in the wealth creation structure. To your exactly what you said, I couldn't have said it any better. If we're doing our job right, then that's what's going to happen. Again, what people said to me, you're not going to be able to find, your MBEs because we just don't have that deep of a market here in Norfolk. In 5 years, when we're all said and done with this, that should not be the case. Nobody should be saying that anymore.
Yep, thank you.
All righty. Thank you very much, Mr. Majors. Appreciate it.
Welcome, Lafayette.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Nice to have you on the team.
And, thank you. And again, folks, in your packet, pages 14 through 22 are a lot of information about the individual. So, again, thank you. Now we're going to move on.
Have a great day, everybody.
You do the same. Be safe. Let's now look at page 23. And that is a resolution about line of credit. LaShondra?
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Alessandra?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good morning. And good morning to the commissioners, Ms. Carnes and Mr. Jackson as well. Jen, can you go ahead and allow me to share my screen with the group, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You present for now.
Right, and then I will hand it back over to you when I'm finished. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what I'm going to do today is give you an update on the Diggstown Phase 1 renovation project and then go right into our agenda item. I also have Nat McCormick and Terry Juliana on the line. They're part of the core team for Diggstown, and they'll be able to answer any questions specific to their area of expertise if we need them. So I thought it was important for us to revisit the renovation plan for the project. I've included some of the items that are in the initial scope of work for the project, and those are just coming up on your screen now.
Page 26 in your packet.
I've also included additional items, and these are some of the change order items that were presented to you probably about a year ago. Those are some of the bigger ticket items that were presented. Under our construction status for the overall project in Diggstown Phase 1, there are 43 buildings. 35 are being renovated, 8 are being demolished, and in that second column, I just put the number of units that correlate to the buildings there for you. As of January 2021, the construction status is that we completed 20 buildings, and 10 buildings are under renovation. And again, you'll see the units that correlate to the building number. The anticipated completion date is September 2021. I would like to tell the board that we are currently in conversations with the contractor to update that completion schedule. The contractor has asked for some more time as it relates to the change orders, and we're negotiating that time right now. I anticipate coming back before you guys next month, and I'll be able to give you more information on that. We have a meeting with them next week. Here you'll see the construction progress map. I've put the buildings in green that are completed and occupied. The ones in yellow are under renovation, and the black buildings are to be demolished, just to give you a little visual for the project. These are some post-renovation photos. You can see in these photos the wall finishes and floors, the updated bathrooms. I've just included some of those here for you guys to take a look at. And then there's a really good picture of the kitchen update as well. I'll go right into our financial update. As you guys know, we had some change orders due to the aging buildings and some additional scope associated with Virginia housing requirements. I put this last bullet in here. Virginia Housing has approved all submitted project change orders. And I did that because some time ago we were talking about change orders, and we had some concerns that Virginia Housing would not accept some of the change orders and would say that some of them were no-cost change orders. And so we went and reserved $500,000 of NRHA unrestricted reserves to handle those change orders. We've been negotiating with Virginia Housing for about a year now, and I just wanted to update that and tell you that they've approved all those change orders, and we won't need that $500,000 in reserves for those change orders as we previously thought we may. So back in November, we talked about a shortfall. We identified a funding gap that was going to occur between the construction completion and project stabilization. And the board authorized us to commit and utilize $2.3 million as a temporary bridge to fund that gap. And then the board was notified that Virginia Housing agreed to provide an additional $2.3 million in tax-exempt funding to the Diggstown project. And so all that happened at the November meeting. We do have a current shortfall that I wanted to talk to you about. And this is solely because the tax-exempt bond schedule that we received shows that we won't get the proceeds from the tax-exempt bond, that $2.3 million, until May of 2021. So that represents a $2.3 million gap between now and when we close on the bond. What we're proposing, because Diggstown is actively under construction and we're still getting change orders presented by the contractor, is to put a temporary source in place until the bond closes in May 2021. And this is what I want to make really clear, is that once we put the temporary source in place, we'll be able to use project funds to pay the change orders until we close on the bond. So this is not us asking for you guys to authorize additional funds that we'll be utilizing. This is for us to balance our sources and uses so we can use money that's in the bank. So we're requesting this additional $2.3 million, and it's not going to result in us drawing any money, but we'll be able to utilize, as I said, project money that's in the bank for this project. Once the bond closes in May, like we said, we will reduce that line of credit obligation back to the $2.3 million that we discussed in November. And so the agenda item that you have is for us to authorize a commitment up to $4.6 million, and that includes the authorization from November and the current request that we have on the authority's $10 million line of credit to meet increased project costs associated with the Diggstown Phase 1 development. We talked about risk, and we sat down and discussed this, and we didn't identify any risk associated with this request because, again, we're not going to spend the line of credit. And we're also going to wait until we get the commitment letter for that bond money that we're talking about. Virginia Housing issues a commitment letter saying that they will indeed give us $2.3 million that'll close in May. And so we're going to wait till we have that commitment letter in our hand before we use any additional money that's in the limited partnership account. What's next? So we have to continue discussions with Virginia Housing in order to solidify the terms of this bond commitment, but we felt like it was important to come to the board and talk about what we're proposing to do, because once we get that commitment letter from Virginia Housing that we're expecting any day now, we'll need to continue to pay the change orders for the project and keep the project moving. And so once Virginia Housing gets that commitment letter, we anticipate coming back to you guys next month and talk about all the terms that were outlined in that letter and give you an amended budget for the project. That is the end of my presentation. I'll give my screen back to Jennifer and open this discussion up for any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, questions?
This is Ken Benassi. I'd like to make a comment. This is the third time I've seen this presentation. At first, we heard it in the Budget Committee. We heard it in the Development Committee yesterday. And I'm confident, upon talking to Terry and Lysandra, that we will have the resources to cover all these obligations. The NOI will be covered. The debt will be handled appropriately. So, from the committee perspective, this looks good.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, then we're looking at the resolution. If there are no further comments, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
You got the second?
Yes, sir. That was a motion by Commissioner Dillard, seconded by Commissioner Arrington.
Okay, if you'll make the call.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Albert?
Aye.
Commissioner Arrington?
Aye.
Commissioner Gresham?
Aye.
Commissioner Purrier?
Aye.
Commissioner Benassi?
Aye.
Commissioner Dillard?
Aye.
Commissioner Musacchio?
Aye. Thank you very much, LaShondra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to housing operations, and that'll be on page 41 in your packet, starting on that. Ms. Mills.
Good morning, Commissioners. How's everyone today?
Good morning.
So as I said last month, when we met, I would be back with lots of information. So today I'm presenting to you our quarterly report for housing operations. This is for the quarter of October through December of 2020. The reports actually go back from July to December 30th, and the updates are for that specific quarter. I do have all of the appropriate directors on the line in case there's any specific questions that you have as we go through the information. So as Chairman Musacchio stated, we're starting on page 41.
41, Donna?
Yes, sir, of your package. And as usual, I just want to highlight a few of the areas throughout the quarterly report, and then we'll go from there with any questions. So starting with the Housing Choice Voucher Program, we are now at 3,951 participants. That's an increase of 27 this quarter ending September 2020. That number is low because, as I've reported before, we are not pulling any applicants off of the wait list for that program. Most of those are for the Tidewater Guard selection. We did lease up the retreat at Harbor Point. We had 50 project-based vouchers. They were required to be leased up by the end of December, and I would like to say that the staff worked very hard to make sure that we met that goal. We also added 27 new landlords to the program during the quarter, and just to share with you, we are seeing an increase in landlords that prior to the source of funds legislation becoming effective that were not participating in the program are now participating in the program. So we're hoping that that number will continue to grow. I want to move on to housing programs. You have your Tidewater Gardens C&I update for that period. I'm going to come back to that in a minute if I can, because I do have an updated dashboard to go over with you after we report. But I do want to let you know that we finally, on February the 8th, heard from HUD that our annual plan has been approved. So we are working on making sure that those changes are included in the policies and are posted on our website. In facilities management, they've been very busy. We've had a number of major events happen during the quarter. Had a car hit a building, some major flooding issues and things like that. So more of my things was in there for that quarter. So they've been very busy working on that. And they've also coordinated with the fire department to conduct some search and rescue training out in some of our vacant units in Tidewater Gardens. In property management, we've spent a little time here. We have a little over 3,000 units. Occupancy rate is about 84%. However, that includes Tidewater Gardens and Diggstown. If you remove those two communities, we're about 95%. Not where we usually are, where we like to be, but that's about average because of COVID and delays in getting units turned and also getting applicants housed. Tenant accounts receivables, you'll see the number for that period, but I do have some updated numbers for you on that today as well. As of January 25th, we are actually at about $396,000 in delinquency for the program. That is about a $250,000 increase from the same time last year, 171% increase. There's actually 529 families that are on the delinquency report. That number has been consistent. It's been in the low 500s for several months. So it's not the number of families that are growing, it's the amount of their debt. So again, it goes back to what we've talked about is some residents are just not paying the rent, and it continues to grow. Of that 529 families, 109 are 90 days or more in delinquency. 90 of those are owing $1,000 or more, owe $5,000 or more.
Lord have mercy.
We had one family that owed $17,000 who had not paid rent since prior to February of last year and had refused to pay rent. We just got possession of that unit, so that amount will come off of here, but that will be a write-off that you will see eventually when we come back.
Boy, that sounds like $10,000.
So we have drafted a letter, I shared it with Ron last week, as a follow-up to the housing and safety meeting that we had, the board committee meeting, a little bit more on the harsher side for these families that we're talking about that just are not paying their rent or making any attempts to pay rent. Working with Jen to finalize that with Ron, I have some recommended changes and we hope to get that out this week. And my plan is to send it to the committee to look at it to make sure that it captures what you would ask for, and then we're going to get that out to these 500 families that are having this delinquency problem. Okay, just want to highlight also as far as terminations for this period, we had 11 evictions, 4.45%, again compared to the second quarter last year where we had 35 at 1.14%. Again, not terminating or evicting for non-payment of rent. We've had several criminal cases where we've evicted families, so that's where that number comes in as well. Okay, moving on to your client services. So you'll see a number of programs that they've hosted during the quarter in both the report and the Family First update. A couple to point out is the partnership with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation at the Calvert Square Vision Center. We did some financial virtual training for 24 residents, and a number of those who attended at least 6 of the workshops received a tablet and 2 years of free Wi-Fi as an incentive. So we used that. The more sessions you came, the more chance you got to get a tablet. So that helps with that. Also, acknowledging that we received the Fsf Awards, Family Self-Sufficiency Award from HUD during this quarter in the amount of $360,000. We partnered with the John Stewart Foundation over the holidays and distributed 500 bags of toys to more than 200 households.
Let me interrupt you for a minute, if I might.
Yeah.
Just to get your perspective, and I may have asked this before because it stays on my mind. Why do you think HUD put so little money into family self-sufficiency? That's one, in my mind, that's one of the most successful vehicles that HUD has if it's administered correctly, and in way of achieving, I think, what our goal could be in permanent housing solutions, upward mobility, and all of that. Give me some, I mean, you've been dealing with HUD for a while.
It's not a politically correct answer.
That's all right. No, I want to get your perspective.
They don't give us enough funding for any of it.
Okay.
We don't get enough operating funding. We don't get enough capital funding. We don't get
Do
enough.
you agree with me though that?
I do. I think that we could do more. We could get more families into the program. It is a successful program. We have a number of families that graduate, get escrow. We've given thousands of dollars out in escrow, and several of those families have been able to purchase a home. I don't have an easy answer.
I've seen it work. My aunt and uncle sold their house right near the Broad Park area that they lived in for years, raised 2 boys in, really nice house, moved to Chesapeake. It was only maybe 6 months later that I found out the person who bought the house was the person that I personally knew who used to live in Tidewater. Whole family grew up in Tidewater. Her and all her sisters, and they were one of the generational things. The mother lived there, and then the sister side. When she got her house, it inspired all of the sisters to get one. And now, out of the 5 sisters that were raised in public housing, all of their children will not be raised in public housing. And that was because of that one self-sufficiency success. I just think that sometimes the multiplying, of course, multiplying. That's exactly right. That works in the reverse too. But you know,
we're hoping with the new administration, because I'm beginning to see that they're peeling back a lot of these programs
Right.
or lack of programs
Yeah.
that I'm beginning to see.
Right.
That I'm thinking that that's how they see.
Think
I mean,
about it.
even under the previous administration, they had the envision thing, but it comes with
No funding.
But I'm thinking if with this administration, you're going to see a lot of funding. It's not going to be like an unfunded kind of mandate thing that they want you to do this, but then you got to go find the money. But I'm hopeful that
You all have sent me and Donna up on the hill.
Well, and after my, report update, I'm gonna be talking about 501c3.
Oh, yes.
Part of the reason that we're bringing up
That's right.
report today, so that'll get to your,
Oh, real
some of your
smooth, Donna, that was real smooth. You got this.
Thanks for the setup.
You grabbed me in the box, yeah.
Okay, the last thing on client services, there is an extra update in your packet on page 180 on the status of the scattered site. If you remember a while back, we came to you, we got approval from HUD to sell those houses, the 15 houses in the scattered site development. There's an update on where we're at, we're moving forward. We have a number of residents who have said they want to purchase their home. I believe we're at 7 right now. We have 2 that want to purchase, just not their specific home they're in now. And we have 5 that have currently said they want to take a voucher. We did receive tenant protection vouchers. These are the first group, and then we'll apply for the next group and then probably the next 1 to 2 months. So there's an update there that you can look at if you need some more information on that. Then we have the Safety and Security Department continuing, as Ron mentioned this morning. We're continuing to address the safety concerns in the community, trying to hold focus group meetings, still trying to work out between the virtual platform and the in-person, because we're not getting a lot of participation when we try to do those virtually. So she's working on that. Her and her team's also reviewing the trespass ban list, which they continue to do. And during this quarter, we've removed 21 individuals from that list. And then you also have included the design and construction update as it relates to the capital fund. Nat provided an information on the corridor activities and our active contracts. So you'll see that in your report as well. And with that, I am finished with the quarterly report, and I'd like to shift over to the Tidewater updated dashboard, unless there's specific questions about the report itself that you'd like to ask now.
Questions? All right, thank you.
Is that on 117 done? The updated Tidewater Gardens relocation dashboard starts on 174.
Oh, 124. Thanks.
That's the cover page, and then it should be right after that. And this is as of January the 31st. And again, I'm just going to highlight some of the areas that I will be happy to answer questions. As of this date, we have 293 vacancies. We're almost about 50% of the community is vacant. We currently have 7 buildings in the community that are completely vacant. There is no residents in those 7. And we've been providing that information to the Norfolk Police Department and our staff to make sure we're monitoring those buildings very closely. In phase 1 of those vacancies, there's 47 units left, still occupied of the 187 total. We are working closely with USI, with the 47 families, to look at what their choices are and assisting them in finding a housing selection based on that choice. You see the People First Empowered updated information that they've served 519 families or households. Since August of 2019, they've had service linkage to 559 families, and they've completed household assessments to 459 households. They've also conducted and worked with us on housing stability interventions for 61 families. Of the 293 vacancies, 150 have gone with a housing choice voucher, and 234 families that have moved have stayed in Norfolk, which is 80% of our business today. And then the last number to highlight is areas of opportunity, which is defined on the back second page, and it is the census
tracts that are highlighted in green that meet this definition defined here, which is less than 62% minority concentration and less than 40% poverty. We're at 43 families, or 29%. And then, as we have noted before, we've broken out poverty rates only, and you'll see those numbers there as well. So we're seeing a continuous increase in movement. COVID's been a challenge, but it hasn't stopped us, and it's starting to seems to be starting to pick back up. Any questions on the dashboard?
No?
And that is all I have for those two items. And
Thank you.
I can move into my next one if you like.
Please do.
Okay. I'll make sure it works. Okay. So again, on starting on page 70 of your package, you have an agenda item on a discussion today for the formation of a 501c3 status for the Housing Authority. This just shows you what a 501c3 means, and it's really an opportunity for us to file for tax exemption of nonprofit organizations, and it will allow us to do more funding-wise than we're currently able to do. We would like to proceed with the formation to help us diversify our funding portfolio. So as Mr. Albert asked City Batter this morning about why we don't get enough funding for some of our programs, we are limited to what HUD allows us in our grant funding applications and what we receive in our subsidies, whether it's operating or capital. With the 501c3 status, we would be able to apply for grants that are only open to those agencies that have that status, and this will help us increase some of our programming, workforce development, and the big one that we struggled with, excuse me, recently is transportation. So I think this really came to a head when we had to close our transportation program because we lost the funding, the grant funding we had for that program, and there was no other resources that we were able to find because we did not have the status. So this will help fund personnel costs and supportive service costs, where a lot of the grants that we do get, there are some restrictions on what those grants will cover.
In the kind of maybe unintended but good benefit of something like this, I mean, there is a slight downside. It's it's going to require some administrative burden, but you guys are carrying that already. It will also require a board, which then allows the opportunity to include more people from the community, and the community at large. It's a way to more closely link what NRHA does, in real life, to try to fight off some of those misconceptions, about housing and the housing authority. It's a way to build champions, both within our constituency and again at large, community at large. So there are some tangential benefits doing this in addition to the opportunity to access that money.
Yeah, and I can speak to that too. We started, where I was before, we started a 501c3 for our early childhood education. So we were able to bring in people who were in that field to be part of the board. And that was really helpful when you have that level of expertise to participate directly into the program.
So it would be open to all programs?
We don't know that. So this is just the beginning step. So what we're here to do today, hopefully, is get your approval for us to move forward with the next step in requesting us to be able to move down that path and to file for the 501c3 status. There's a number, and I'll get to a slide that kind of talks about the steps that we have to take. So as this earlier stated, there is a process, there's administrative work that we have to do. But then once we get the filing done and we get approved, hopefully, we'll figure out how that's going to work and what our goals and missions are going to be. We'll have a board, and we'll have to work the details out from that.
you know, I think the way our bureaucracies hurt us sometimes is, especially in leadership, once you get that up and running, and you get a, sufficient grant that funds something, right? And it's, let's say you get a grant for $2 million to fund transportation for 3 years. Then our bureaucrats turn around and reduce whatever budget you have some other area because you got that, and then you end up with sort of budget neutral when you have moved in it, you have moved. So we have to find a way, and I know our board understands that, but we have to find a way also to keep the people in Washington from feeling like if you provide a report and you say, you know, we were successful in getting $60 million for, you know, capacity enhancement or something. They don't reduce your budget then by that amount like they do when because you never get ahead, and it's the same thing with the organization. You never get to the point that you can have some discretionary options for how you deploy the program, how you use it, how, you know, who comes in, who comes. Anyway, it has the potential to be neutral, and and it has the potential to really fail. And whenever I'm asked by another state or a city to come and set up a program like Second Chances, typically what I do is just decline before even going, because I know that they want to fund it just enough for you to fail. I mean, just enough to get it operational. Let's see how it does, you know.
And it does, and the one thing it'll do, it'll open up opportunities for corporate sponsors too, so you just can't rely on one source of funding. And it depends on how you tell the story, that's when you get the corporate.
That's right.
They want to be a part
That's right.
of that, when you can put their name or have a fundraiser, and you can see that they're donating to something. So you just can't, when you do that, you just can't depend on one source of funding.
Bingo.
Right, and it goes back to the discussion earlier about HUD funding. One of the things, and I'm not sure if you're all aware of this, but when we converted to RAD in our communities, which are now project-based vouchers, we do not get ROS funding for those communities. That's only eligible for public housing. So as we converted those communities, if we had it, we can continue with what we had, but we do not get any new ROS funding. So that hurt us in the conversion. So there were some positives and some negatives to the conversion. That was one of the negatives. And the hope is that these grant opportunities, and they're just like any other grant, whether it's a HUD grant or through this, is there's work that comes along with it. And we need to make sure it's not hurting us. It's here to help us and help the residents. That's the main goal with trying to proceed with it.
Touché.
Yeah. Okay, and this slide talks about that, the funding that comes with the conversion with the RAD, the FSS. Fortunately, it is eligible for both programs, so we're able to continue that. Yeah. But the ROS program was one that got hit when we converted to PPP or RAD. And as we talked about in the current funding levels, we get funded for housing. We don't get funded for services and programs, and we've managed to continue to provide that up until when transportation being the biggest hit, when that funding went away, that we've been challenged with. So, Ms. Aaron, back to your question. So this is just a copy of the next step. If we get approval to move forward with this, the next step is to petition the city council for the creation, and then there's a number of other steps that we have to go through. So this will be a process. It's going to take a little time for us to move through this process, but once we get direction from you, we will go ahead and get started on it right away. And then I just, in the last slide, we included some examples of potential funding opportunities if we were able to apply and receive our 501c3 status. One that's not on here is the Hampton Roads Community Foundation. As a couple of board members know, there was some conversation with them a few months back with the transportation program, and the first thing on their eligibility is, are you a 501c3? So that would also be another opportunity for me. So with that, I will be happy to answer any other questions and look to the board for direction if this is something that you would like to see us move in the direction. I would like.
Do we have to take a vote, or is just head nodding, and grinning? So, please move forward.
We will do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great.
You did the same. Thank you.
I know. I missed it somehow.
I think now is finance. If you look at page 78. And Mr. Jackson, you are up.
Okay. You just pull the. Yeah. Okay, well, what you have before you is the resolution to adopt the guiding principles. And I was thinking about this today, how it was born out of, at first I initially thought it was born out of the social unrest that we were experiencing around, with the death of George Floyd. But actually, when I think there was a conversation that started about forming a book club, so it seemed like the board was already thinking of trying to, at least amongst themselves, talk sort of frankly about issues related to race and diversity and inclusion before we actually had the social unrest. And I know that we had that sort of accelerated us to want to, the board to want to get together and start talking about it. And in addition to social unrest, we also had some issues in the workplace that we felt that needed to be addressed. And for me, I know that those particular situations, we really didn't have a policy per se to address them specifically. So the social unrest, and also considering what was going on in the organization, we thought that within the setting of the retreat, that we have the opportunity to talk frankly with the board would and talk about some issues and what would be the outcome of the retreat. So the outcome of the retreat was the guiding principles. And I know that I've only shared it with the executive team. We haven't shared it with the staff per se, but once it is officially adopted, that would be the next step. And one of the things that I've always stressed when we talked about developing guiding principles, that would just be the beginning of sort of providing the framework for me or the executive team to start looking at policies that will help guide, policies that will help reinforce what the guiding principles are about. Those are the things those are some of the next steps. I've already reached out to some, I've talked to Richard and some, Dr. Sanchez, and there's some others that have been involved that will help us. And I'll even like to recruit the chair if he's to be on that committee. Sure. To sort of start looking at some policies that will address some of the guiding principles that are sort of at a more practical level, and also training, because I think that's going to be critically important. Those are not, like when I mentioned that some of the reports that I saw about the organization when I first started is that there was some the term used was sensitivity training that was needed for the organization. So I think that this sort of helps provide the foundation for sensitivity, cultural competency training, anything related to what's within the guiding principles. So anyway, what's presented before you is just a resolution to adopt the guiding principles that the board, you all to be commended for developing that, because we see that, within these times that are going on, that, these are the kind of principles that we sort of, fly in the face with some of the for example, what happened on January 6th, some of the momentum that was behind that directly contradicts what we're trying to do. So I see a lot of organizations, progressive organizations, coming out and making statements along the lines of
Comments?
Yeah, we are definitely on the right page.
Okay.
I didn't hear Ms. Rose. I'm sorry, Ms. Rose. I couldn't hear your comment.
We are definitely on the right page.
Thank you.
All right. Other comments? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Entertain a motion.
I'm sorry. Was that Mr. Benassi?
Yes.
Thank you.
A second?
A second.
Mr. Dillard? Ms. Carnes?
Mr. Albert?
Aye.
Ms. Arrington?
Aye.
Mr. Gresham? Ms. Purrier?
Aye.
Mr. Benassi?
Aye.
Mr. Dillard?
Aye.
Mr. Musacchio?
Aye. Thank you very much. Now we'll look at starting on page 81 of your packet. I'll ask Ms. Rath to come forward.
81.
Yes, 81.
What was that, Ruben?
Just press F5.
Good morning. I'll try to be as quick as possible. I know that it's getting a little late. I'm here to present this morning the fiscal year 21 mid-year projections, so our current fiscal year. The Budget and Finance Committee did have an opportunity to review the same presentation in a more detailed version on Monday. So I believe it's in your packets already. The very detailed slides from Monday are included at the end. So if there's a desire to visit them, we can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, this is going to keep it pretty high level. So we're going to start this morning. And we just want to let everyone know before we begin, this presentation is based off of November financial statements. And we have worked with departments and directors and managers to adjust the projections for seasonality and no changes in labor. And that the two takeaway slides are going to be the most important. So if we could focus on those.
Jen, can you please mute that line?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just mute them.
I'd have to mute everybody. Okay, including the commissioner on the line.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Are we good? Okay.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, so the first slide is the agenda. Not too much to say here. We're going to walk through the 21 approved budget, really focus on two slides of key takeaways. We're going to look at some budget to actual projections, talk about funding gaps by division, and then give a high-level overview of the fiscal year 22 through 24 calendar, which is happening now, and some changes that are happening there as a result of doing a 3-year budget. So on the screen, what you'll see is an overview of the fiscal year 21 approved budget, which is currently $128.4 million. We usually don't walk through it in this detail, but there were some unusual circumstances when the fiscal year 21 budget was approved with the timing of COVID and budget amendments. So if you recall, back in June, we had a budget book that totaled this number here, $121.4 million. We reduced the budget by the amount of the merit increases, but there wasn't enough time due to COVID and the timing to change the physical budget book. And then the board allowed Mr. Jackson to add back $530,000 of vacant positions that have been defunded to keep operations moving efficiently. And since then, we have approved 4 budget amendments, bringing our total to $128.4 million. key takeaways, and these next two slides are really the crux of the whole presentation. Overall, the agency is performing favorably compared to the approved budget. We had a budgeted funding gap of a little over $10 million. We're projecting a gap of just over $5 million, and so there's over about almost $5 million of appropriations of reserves that we're not going to need to use that were planned for this year. So that's good news. The next bullet, though, which we really want to highlight, even though we're performing favorably compared to the budget, we are still going to need to use reserves in fiscal year 21 to fund our ongoing operations. So we used reserves the last few years. We're going to have to continue that trend. Again, from the first bullet, it was planned, but just keeping in mind as we roll into fiscal 22 and the out years that we are still reliant upon the reserves for operations.
Laura, question.
Yes.
How, and I know, Mr. Bernanke and I kind of raised this, in the finance, subcommittee meeting. Well, that's right, I was out there, go ahead.
Okay. If we can come back to later too, if you want. So, and the third bullet on here, also very important, and it was relevant last year and again this year. Some of the revenues used and received are one-time revenues. So some of the revenues that are allowing us to balance the budget in 21 and have this positive outlook are one-time revenues. And a great example of that is the CARES Act funding. And of course, we won't have that funding in future years. So it's tremendously helpful in fiscal year 21. We just have to keep in mind that that's not going to be there as an ongoing revenue source. The second slide is key takeaways. Just as a bullet, we're continuing the practice that's been established of fully appropriating all the current year earnings prior to using reserves. And that's great because it reduces our use of the reserves in the current year. But just a reminder that it's also creating a situation where we don't have the opportunity to replenish the reserve balances. So if we're spending up all the current year earnings, we're not putting the money back in the bank to replenish the reserves that we've used. The middle bullet here, normally when the budget office comes to you, we can say we have a lot of money in turnover savings and vacancies and labor and the associated fringe benefits. This year, it's a little tighter as a result of that action I mentioned earlier because we defunded all of the vacant positions as a balancing action when the 21 budget was approved. We're not seeing the level of wiggle room that we've become accustomed to. So the budgets for the departments are getting a little tighter, a little more difficult for them to operate within, and we're not seeing those large vacancy savings that are typically used to offset maybe some other unplanned or higher than budgeted activities. And lastly, just a reminder that positive outcomes in some areas might make the agency look favorable overall. However, revenues and earnings in some programs cannot be used for others. A lot of revenue sources have strings attached to them. So overall, it may look favorable, but it might not necessarily benefit other projects and programs. This is the agency-wide look at the fiscal year 21 projections. This is all 70 or so projects and programs rolled up into one slide. On the next slide, you'll see the support for this by division, but just a couple high-level things here. You can see that we're projecting to conclude the year with a favorable outcome of about $11 million. And revenue is down, use of discretionary reserves is down, and program specific as well. And then we're coming in projecting a little bit more than budgeted in the earnings. So The big variances here are, capital and direct type of activities, not so much operational, where if we don't receive or are not awarded the revenue, we don't pursue the expenditure or the action. So for example, in the capital fund program, we had planned about $3.5 million of activities that are not going to occur this year. With the City of Norfolk CIP funding, we had budgeted about $6.4 million of requested funding that we didn't receive from the City of Norfolk, so those activities will move forward. And the other real large swing there is phase 2 of the COVID cost relief program, which is going to span fiscal years, and we had budgeted it all in fiscal 21. So some of the spending will occur next year, and you'll see that again in next year's budget. Are there any questions on this slide before we? No? Okay. This slide is really the support for the previous slide, and this is breaking the budgeted funding gaps out and laying them up against the projections by division. In housing, you can see the projected funding gap is considerably lower than what was budgeted. The main reason for that is the CARES Act funding, that one-time funding that we received. As a result of that funding, federally aided housing is projected to pretty much break even, where we had a large budgeted shortfall. I want to say it's about $1.5 million that we will, we're not projecting to recognize. The shortfall in Housing Choice Voucher Administration is also significantly less because of the CARES Act money, so that's down. Development is also down. The main reason here is we're not projecting to need all of the C&I advances. We did a budget amendment several months ago in the amount of $3.2 million for C&I pre-development advances. We're not projecting to need all that money. And other programs, it's really a hodgepodge of everything else in the agency that's not development and that's not housing. There's some items there that are up and some that are a little down, and we can delve more into that if there's questions or comments about specific projects or programs. As an aside, at the end of this presentation, after the end slide, is the support for all of those specific projects. We can, if there's any questions, talk about those. And lastly, these are the next steps in our budget process. We're currently in the midst of preparing the fiscal year 22 through the fiscal year 24 budget. This is the first time that we're doing a multi-year budget, so it's going to look a little bit different, and there's going to be some notable changes from last year's budget. And we're really hopeful that this is going to help us facilitate some long-range planning, especially where the use of reserves is in question. We will be required to balance multiple years, so it's going to be a pretty intense exercise. But as a result of all that, we've allowed the department some extra time to present to the budget office their budget submissions. Normally, we would come to the Board of Commissioners in March with an expenditure presentation. This year, to facilitate giving the departments more time, we're going to combine the expenditure and revenue presentations in April, and then we'll follow our normal pattern of seeing balancing strategies in May and the proposed budget and the work session in June and budget adoption. There's also going to be a different look to the budget document as we look to find meaningful ways to display multiple years of data and some extra columns and things that haven't been there before that will be there. And in following along with something that worked really well last year, we did it because of COVID, but it seemed to be a success. The proposed budget will be approved, will be provided in electronic version unless otherwise requested. We'll be happy to print copies for anyone that wants them, but we will send it out to the printer. And then we will do the same for the approved budget. We will print in-house hard copies for anyone that would like one, but make it available mostly electronically to staff and anyone who prefers that medium. So that will allow us a little bit of savings and not printing so many books and staff time. So there's some changes on the horizon for what the document will look like. And that's all I have, unless we want to talk about a specific project or program. And again, if you move through your packet, you'll see the detailed slides that support the rollout.
The only thing I'd like to add is just, for me, I don't want to sound alarmist, but this, to me, it's not sustainable. When your earnings have to go to all your earnings are eaten up, plus your reserves to maintain operations, there's definitely something needs to change. It's not sustainable. So that's one of the things that when I thought of doing the organizational assessment, that was one of the reasons for doing that, is that if there's any opportunities to do some restructuring, also including cost-cutting measures, because a lot of it is expected of the authority, but the way it's currently situated financially, we're not going to be a viable organization for very long.
We're working ourselves right out of business.
Well,
Keep on like that.
But
there's no money, and the agency goes away.
Some part of it is that there was a way that organizational structure that worked maybe 5 or 10 years ago that hasn't changed.
Right.
But so that's why I said maybe with the organizational assessment, we'd be able to take a look, present it to the board. There'd be some decisions made. The last thing you want to do is to do any kind of staffing things. But I think what the organizational assessment will do is at least give us a roadmap that we could head toward for the future and not have to do anything drastic. Mm-hmm. But it really needs to be addressed sooner than later, because it's not a sustainable. If we were a for-profit organization, we wouldn't exist.
Right.
We couldn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and we have to start thinking of ourselves that way. Unfortunately, in this environment, with we talked about the funding, we talked about the 501c3. We have to start thinking of ourselves as being a solvent, viable organization to be able to do the things we want to do. If we were in a private industry, we wouldn't be in a private industry very long. So I'm hoping with the assessment and then, with some more information in terms of, our finances, to be able to present to the board that we've made some decisions for the mid to long term for the financial health of the organization.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Like I say, jokingly say we've already got the masks on.
That's right. We just need
the guns now. Or lottery tickets.
That's right. Lottery tickets.
Again, next is review of any of the previous month's activities, which are on pages 88 to 90. And then also any comments, questions about that? All right, if not, then we'll take a look at the committee notes, which I think are very well done.
I do have
Go ahead.
kind of a typo thing on those.
Sure.
Although you may have done this on purpose, it's not going to work. On page 110 and 127, I believe that there's the notes and scheduling for the Housing and Safety Committee that I sort of chair with Alfonso.
Right.
But these notes have left off Housing and Safety Committee, and they have me being the chair of the entire Board of Commissioners. So we just need to correct that.
I think that can be handled.
I believe so.
But yes, one other thing, the reason it's 181 pages, there seems to be many repetitions of what was done at a particular subcommittee. So the subcommittee got a 20-page report. It then shows up 2 or 3 times. And again, I understand they're electriciables, as we used to call them, and they don't cost much, but it does seem to make the package very, very big. So again, if there's nothing on that or any new business, what I'll do now is I'll ask if anybody in the public wants to make, before we go into a closed session.
Star 9.
So, anyone in the public who wishes to be recognized, please dial star 9 to raise your hand, and you will be called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number. If you are called upon and want to make some statements, please state your name and address when called upon. Ms. Moore, do we have anyone?
We don't have anyone, but I'll go check the lobby while we wait.
Please do. Thank you.
We have no guests in the lobby. We have no speakers on the line.
All right. Then I will go ahead and look for a resolution going into a closed session. Be it resolved that the authority will convene in a closed meeting pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as amended, the Act, to discuss the following matter, which is specifically exempted from public disclosure by code section referred to below. 1, consultation with the authority's legal counsel regarding probable litigation requiring provision of legal advice by counsel as authorized by section 2.2-3711.A.7 of the Act. May I have them?
I'm sorry, we do have a public comment that just came through.
Oh, okay.
May I,
Yeah, let's go ahead. I mean, we didn't take the vote.
We are having technical issues in getting their line unmuted. And so I'm going to ask them to submit it in writing.
Okay. And then we'll get back to them with some response after the closed session. Do I have to read it again?
No, sir.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for the closed meeting.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Ms. Carnes?
Mr. Albert?
Aye.
Ms. Arrington?
Aye.
Mr. Gresham? Ms. Purrier?
Aye.
Mr. Benassi? Mr. Benassi? Mr. Benassi? I'll get back to you. Mr. Dillard?
They're muted, I have to unmute them, I'm sorry.
Oh, you got it.
Remember, we muted everybody.
They're all unmuted now.
Mr. Benassi?
Aye.
Mr. Dillard?
Aye.
Mr. Musacchio?
Aye. All right, well, as we typically do, we'll take a few minutes, reminding you that you are not to discuss any business whatsoever during this time. So, Jen, whatever we have to do to mute and shut the doors and do all that stuff.
We do have one comment that we're going to address after the closed session.
Correct.
Okay. Addressing that first.
Take a bathroom break.
Yeah, but just again, please don't discuss them.
No, I'm going to.
Jesus. only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the authority. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Albert?
Aye.
Ms. Arrington?
Aye.
Mr. Gresham? Ms. Purrier?
Aye.
Mr. Benassi?
Aye.
Mr. Dillard?
Aye.
Mr. Musacchio?
Aye. I'll take us out of closed session, and, Jen, do we have that
Oh, can I answer?
request?
We should be able to address the group with star 9, if they have any
Oh,
questions.
again, anyone in the public who wishes to, speak, please dial star 9 to raise your hand, and it will be called on by the last four digits of your phone number. If you are called upon, please state your name and address.
We do have one caller. Caller ending in phone number 1812. Your line is unmuted. Please state your name and address the board.
Good morning, board. My name is Nakira, and I don't feel completely comfortable giving out my full address on a public recorded meeting, but I am a long-standing and concerned resident of Norfolk. One of the committee members said, when your earnings are eaten up, plus your reserves, it's not sustainable. So my question is, how does financial literacy training help if savings accounts and life insurance are counted as income for residents, and that increases your rent? These are some of the building blocks of personal and generational wealth. So I'm not sure, even with all the training in the world, how they're supposed to build.
Yeah,
That was the budget, that was the part.
yeah, again, this is Don Masaccio, I'm the chair. Really appreciate your question, but it's typically something that we would refer to one of the staff members.
I'm not sure we understood the question correctly, and perhaps there was a misunderstanding. The prior comment was made by Ron Jackson during the budget presentation for the agency overall, and he was making the comment that it's not a sustainable strategy to appropriate all of the earnings and to decrease the reserves to continue to fund the agency. His comment was not directly related at all to the finances of individual residents. So if you could please rephrase your question, maybe we misunderstood on our end.
No, I completely understand when the comment was made, but I identify with the sentiment. I completely agree that when your earnings are eaten up plus your reserves, it's not sustainable. So when the reserves of the residents would be considered a savings account or a life insurance policy, and that is part of their income and that raises their rent, therefore eating up their reserves, how are these people, even with financial literacy training that you all are offering, how are they supposed to get ahead?
We'll refer your question to Ms. Donna Mills.
Yeah, again, thank you very much for the question. It's kind of interesting to find the answer to that, but we will have Donna Mills and staff member get back with you specifically on that how it relates to a particular individual's reserves. But again, thank you very much for your question.
Okay, thank you. And I just had one more question that's not related to the funding.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you guys feel as though virtual meetings that require 2 devices is a bit of a hindrance to the public? As the gentleman earlier stated, public housing residents do not have adequate access to the internet. And if they were to call in, they'd be confused by the inability to see the presentation. So would there be a meeting format that would be more accessible to everyone, aside from the fact that it's during work hours?
I'll have our communications person answer that.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. So my name is Jen Moore. I'm the communications director for the agency. So after extensive research on all virtual platforms, including Zoom, GoToMeeting, Google Hangouts, Webinex, Broadnet, we have concluded that the majority of our residents that do not have internet access would not be able to call in and virtually engage in discussion. for example, the hand raising feature is not something that residents can engage in without internet access. So the setup that we do have that we've ultimately selected on is a little cumbersome for our own staff to manage, but it actually makes our residents without internet access, smartphone access, and this calling from a landline, able to engage by raising their hand and engaging in conversation. Access to the material that is shown on the screen today is available online and can be made available by request in a printed packet for those who wish for access to that information to follow along.
Okay, and is there not an option just to use this platform with audio? I guess that's just some of my concern. I work closely with a lot of the residents, and that's their only hindrance, is the fact that they can't hear when they're looking. If they could use their data on their cell phone plans, if they have smartphones, that would be a lot easier for them, but they can't hear and look at the same time.
That is correct. So the feature is set up the way it is so that those without internet access are able to call in and engage in public comment. And this is discussions that I personally had with the staff members of GoToMeeting to determine for a long-term sustainable solution. And at this point in time, those large-scale platforms do not offer that ability.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Other public comments? Commissioners, any final comments?
Was that the comment that was left in writing as well?
Yes, that was the
Perfect, thank you, I just want to make sure we got that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, hearing none, I am going to call the February Board of Commissioners meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
I look forward to seeing you all next month in person.
Yay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Give that a second shot.
All right, we're going to disconnect this line. Thank you to those participating by phone.